Fuel prices all over the place, gas and electric we can barely afford, interest rates, inflation, the wage gap increasing. So why is it rents are still increasing? So let's start with my favourite, supply and demand economics. We're trying to hit that equilibrium, which, by the way, never exists. Let's start with the supply of property. Only 204,000 properties were built in the last year. Well, that's loads. No, it's not when you look at the demand compared to it. Right now, in the whole of the UK, we have only 1% voids. That's right, 99% of properties are rented out. And when the supply is so low, naturally, when demand is so much higher, the prices increase. And the same is true with rentals. Next is our friend inflation. Every single day, it's eroding the value of a pound. And the reason that's all happened is because of, well, a lot of things, the pandemic, etc. But supply versus demand suddenly explodes, and the inflation increases the cost of labor, the cost of wood, the cost of bricks, everything that is needed to build a property. And so therefore, that needs to get passed on. Inflation is a silent killer. Now, how do we handle that? And the third problem comes in. Interest rates. Now, interest rates have been going up and up and up and up and up, and you think, oh my God, this is crazy. Well, think logically about this. I'm going to walk you through a little path right now. So, interest rates go up, which means the cost of borrowing goes up. Most people nowadays can't just buy a house outright. If you can, good for you. But most of us need to get a mortgage. But those people that need to get their first mortgage now can't afford the mortgage because the monthly payments are too much, but they don't want to move into a shithole that's beneath them. So instead, what do? They can't buy it, so they rent it in the area. Well, if more people now are going to rental, what happens to the rental demand? It goes up. But also the landlords that are renting out these properties now need to pay more. So what happens when the interest rates goes up on our properties? Unfortunately, or fortunately, who gets to pay it? The tenant. Which then again, the interest rates increase, the rents increase, the demand for rent increases, and it's this ever-developing thing. Now, the idea is interest rates goes up, inflation rates come down, which it is, and then the interest rates come back down. But how many landlords do you know that then go, hey, I'm going to reduce my rent right now? Doesn't happen. Next is the pandemic. Not a lot to say apart from the pandemic caused a 3-month total lockdown, and on average that takes around 2 to 2.5 years to facilitate that demand, which I know is crazy when you think about it, but everything is so slowed down. We are only just feeling the impact of the slowdown of that dramatic growth. Capital growth, for example, has been over 10% for the last 3 years. Crazy. The pandemic has had a huge impact on that. And lastly, population growth. Now, actually, the production rate of newborns is actually quite low because apparently we're in a sex recession, I heard this morning. There you go. However, that also means we're aging as a population, i.e. there's more adults that want to go there. So the population of the UK has risen by around 11 million, and that's in the last 50 years, which is almost 20% of the population. By the way, of that, in the last 10 years, that's 3.7 million. Okay, 5.9% of the population has been in the last 10 years. We have been busy. With this population growth and the pandemic, what that's also created is the world getting smaller, i.e. more people are willing to travel around the world for jobs and we can work remotely. So, Jamie, that's cool. What does it mean? Well, let's follow down the storyline. So what happens is the world moves to London, one of the safest places to work. But then London is such crazy prices and overinflated. And then people go, hold on a second, I can get a London job, London money, and not live there. Don't get any ideas, Alex, on that. And then what happens is people go, hey, I can actually move. And one of the most popular places for that is Leeds, where I happen to be. I'm very fortunate for that. So then what happens is a load of companies and a load of individuals move up north, get paid from London and pump into the local economies, and then it gets distorted. And so the people that aren't on this bandwagon struggle whilst others thrive at a third of the price. It's at this point I will shamelessly plug myself. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, damn, this guy actually knows something about property, hopefully. And you're thinking, you know what, I want to build my portfolio, but I don't have the time, I don't have the inclination, and I don't have the knowledge to get it right. Well, that's what we actually do at Aspire Property Group. If you want to find out more and just have a one-to-one phone call to find out a little bit, maybe do a strategy session, just put APG in the comments. And what I'll do is I'll put a link in and put it in the top comment as well and pin that to the top. I want to link back to housing shortage, and it's kind of the part two. The housing shortage is very real in the UK because there's only one thing that we love bitching about more than landlords crushing everything and the property sector and rising prices, and that is not in my backyard. A real big movement is the not in my backyard movement, where basically I'm going to bitch and moan about the prices in the area, but don't you fucking dare develop something here. That's going to really piss me off, right? Now, in the UK, we've got 94% of our land that's greenbelt. We're only allowed to build on 6% of the UK, but we only actually build on 3% because of the rest of us arseholes telling them to stop. The government wants to get the votes, which I'm not really going to rant about that. Oh yeah, I am. And then they do fuck all to actually help developers. So the problem is they put a lot of things in place to help you and me buy more of the available stock. So the problem is if it makes it easier and easier, i.e. we don't need to put 10%, now we need to put 5% in, and we don't need to pay that stamp duty, we're going to waive that if you're a first time buyer. All of that sounds amazing, but all that does is put added pressure on the existing stock. And so really, if we want to fix this problem, government, if you listen, I know the PM listens to me all the time, by the way, what you need to be doing is putting as much effort, time and energy and money into helping more developments take place, i.e. we need to dramatically increase the supply so that we're more in line with that demand. Rant over. So we've got these zones around the world, actually, the HEDCs and the LEDCs, which is the high economic development countries and the low economic development countries. And they actually act very similarly in terms of when there's infrastructure and demand and things like that. Now, what's happened economically and politically with this, a political factor, if you like, is everyone in the UK has been so concentrated for so long in London. And so all of the development, all of the money is pissed off the rest of the country, and so that's caused this real sort of catalyst, and it's all building up, and then suddenly it explodes, right? Which is what's happened. But then, of course, there's been the born of the northern powerhouses. So originally you had Manchester, which arguably is towards the end. You've got Leeds, and then, of course, the northeast in maybe 5 years' time we'll start seeing that. But because of this influx of high economic development, this has pushed so much money into the UK and the development up north. And so whilst they're trying to keep up to this, for example, the South Bank development in Leeds is going to be 350 football pitches worth of residential development. That's also going to take them between 30 and 50 years. So I look forward to doing a video on that when I'm 81 years old. The other thing that we've got is this inflation and cost of living. I've linked this back earlier, but what's the actual impact? It's, well, because it's pushing onto the rental sector. So you've got these people, let's assume you live up in Leeds, maybe you want to buy your first house that's going to be 250k, you've saved up 20k, you're thinking, oh, I want to save up to 10%. Well, and then what's happened is everything started costing more. Our gas, our electric, I've heard of people's gas like trebling sometimes. Their electric going crazy. And so their 20 grand becomes 19, becomes 18, becomes 15. And so suddenly the aspiration of ever getting to that starts getting into our mentality. And then so what people do is they start going, hey, do you know what? Maybe this isn't for now. Maybe we'll buy in the future. Let's reassess our situation. And so what they do is they start finding another rental. Maybe they've lived at home, but they're sort of thinking, we're not going to be able to buy, we moved there. And so all of this economic pressure through inflation, which, to be fair to the government, they are trying to do something about, which is working. But what happens in the meantime is we go into these rentals. And so in terms of the rental pressure, if you are a renter, I'm sorry to say this, you're probably not going to see any alleviation for the next 12 to 18 months. And then it will stabilize, but very unlikely will it come down. Sorry. Good news is, if you are an investor, this is going to be really great news for you. So what you need to be doing is selecting the right northern powerhouse for you. And honestly, I'd be looking at 4 areas. Manchester, if you want to get towards the top of the cycle. Leeds, West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, if you want to be a part of that uplift and capital growth that's going on. Nottingham's kind of a cool place, and the Northeast, maybe start looking there in the next 3 to 5 years. Now, if you're interested in those areas, you want to do some more sort of economic deep dive, maybe have some one-on-one time, I'd love to have a chat. So what we're doing right now is at Aspire, we're opening up some completely free, by the way, one-to-one strategy sessions. And the idea of this, by the way, so it's selfish and selfless, is to add load of value, but also if I feel it's right for you to help you build your portfolio, I'll tell you what our offering is and we can do that. So we've only got a select amount of spaces. As you can imagine, thousands of people watch each video. But if you want to have one, put APG in the comments or click on the link in the description or the comments pinned to the top. Fill in your details and we look forward to having that chat. I really hope you've got value from this video. If you have, just take 2 seconds and hit that like button. It really does help. And you know what? The way that you can add value to me, if you've made it this far, I assume you've got some value, is just by subscribing and maybe sharing this with somebody that you think would get value from this channel. So if you're not a subscriber already, hit the subscribe and the notification bell, and I'm going to see you in the next video.